Hello and welcome to my Google Hangout. Today we're going to talk about open source. You may find yourself asking, what is open source? Open source software is a software that can be freely used, changed, and shared in modified or unmodified forms by anyone. Open source software is made by people for people. Open source is something that can be shared because its design is publicly accessible. So here's a little background information about open source. Researchers with access to ARPANET used a process called Request for Comments to develop telecommunication network protocols. This led to the birth of the internet in 1969 and was the beginning of open source, which and this term was not popularized until 1998. So the open source development process is fairly simple and straightforward. So it starts with an existing project and then goes into three different phases: initiation, execution, and releasing. And then it's continued, it will continue to be developed afterwards. So there are two types of sources: open and closed sources. Open sources, they're released to the development community and undergo a secondary phase of evolution, whereas a closed source is developed in isolation through small teams, which makes it not very secure and more at risk for viruses, while the development community is more secure and bugs can be easily fixed in open source. So there are so many different criteria for open source, but I think the primary and most important criteria is the discrimination rules. So there's no discrimination against people or groups and no discrimination against fields of endeavor. I think this is super important because a big thing about open source is inclusion and collaboration, and the no discrimination acts aid in this. There's so many different ways you can apply open source. Anything you really want to do can be applied to open source. For example, project management, text editors, scanning utilities. So for project managers, one of the most important things is you have to make sure you have an active community for, again, that collaboration aspect. For the business intelligence reporting tools, you can use these to analyze data and present it in a concise and reliable form. And this is so important for presenting and reporting different things for businesses, because that clear and concise reporting manner is definitely key. For text editors, these are for, you'd use this if you are writing in like more difficult or more scientific terms, and you could use things like SciTE or Emacs or NoteTab Lite, and that would help you use these different languages. And by languages, we don't mean foreign languages, but like languages as in like computer, or like as in science terminology. And you can have science terminology coding. Data visualization tools, I think, are the coolest. My favorite tools are like Raw or Leaflet, and you get these awesome infographics, like the three infographics on the right that are basically an interesting way to visually portray your statistics, and it's just super cool and helpful. And scanning utilities, they help character recognition for different languages and scanning documents and PDFs. And then contact management systems are super, super, super helpful for collaborative environments. They help to manage workflow, and it's just really great for delegating different tasks to different people. So in society and culture today, there are three different ways that we see open source: government, ethics, and media. In the government, we have open politics, which means basically there are blogs and forums and email lists where politicians can interact with the public, and they can set up set of rules and processes that they want to implement in their further election, or in their further work as government officials. And then ethics, there's a professional body of rules which is based principally on the Computer Ethics School, studying the questions of ethics and professionalism in the community, industry in general, and software development in particular. And then the open source journalism is just basically a big collaborative journal entry or any sort of journalism project And it's super cool because it just helps to unite the world. So there's an open source initiative that is dedicated to promoting open source software. It started in 1998, and OSI has many affiliates. For example, Apache, Drupal, Sahana, Wikimedia, and a bunch more. This first launched in 1998 and was established as a steward organization for the movement. And it couldn't get a trademark for open source because it was too general of a term. In 2008, there was an effort to reform the organization of the group, and OSI, the OSI board invited 50 individuals to join, and July 26, 2008, 42 people accepted their invitation, which was super cool because they got to help to expand the company. 2009, they were temporarily suspended in California because of some old tax paperwork, but this was resolved, and the OSI in California is still in operation. So OSI today is still in operation, still in California. There are so many different layers, and these layers are just different aspects that you can find the OSI model in society today. And thanks to open source, our world is becoming more and more connected and more collaborative. And hopefully one day everything we do is a collaborative effort and everyone gets a say in it. And through open source, we will be able to achieve this.